Okay, so Chapter 2, HTML5. This actually shouldn't be called Introduction to HTML5. It should be called Introduction to HTML because there's nothing in here that's new from HTML4 at all. Chapter 3 is when they really start getting into some of the HTML5 stuff. So this really should be HTML5. And I don't know if we'll get into 3 tonight or not. We'll see. But we'll look at HTML as really the hypertext markup language is the language for creating documents that you see in your browser. We'll create some simple documents. We'll look at adding images, create and use hyperlinks to help users navigate web pages, markup lists of information, create tables with rows and columns of data, and use forms to get user input. And we'll look at some examples of what I've done. Lists, tables, forms, internal linking, meta elements. We'll look at all that. So HTML5, which stands for the Hypertext Markup Language, the 5th version of it. And again, this chapter really doesn't introduce anything new to 5, so it's really all background information. As we do get further into it, we'll see that it can be useful for working with databases and phone applications. We'll create a simple document today, an HTML document. You have another number of options when creating HTML documents, depending upon the operating system you're on. You can use Notepad on Windows, TextEdit on the Mac, VI and Emacs on Linux. You generally want to give it an HTML extension. I don't like to give HTML extensions. That's old Windows 95. You're really going way back if you're using a 3-character extension. And computers called web servers, we'll talk about that. One thing we will talk about probably if for a lot of the stuff we're doing early on, you don't really need a web server to do it. You can just do it and open it right on your computer. But there is a product called XAMPP that I really like for doing a lot of web stuff and actually running a mini web server, Apache web server on your computer that also supports PHP and MySQL and even Java, so it's pretty good. Later, when you really want to test some stuff that uses some PHP and database stuff and even mobile apps, you're going to want to have Apache. So if we wanted to look at our example here, and what could you do? So if I wanted this, I'm in a directory. And let's see. I could just say notepad ex1.html. Unfortunately, we can't really copy and paste from here, although I think I have these examples. We'll just retype it. I mean, doing it is fairly straightforward. The comments you don't really need. What they're showing you here with this thing is what's known as a comment, which means it's ignored by the browser, and it's there really just for informational purposes. So this meta char set equals UTF-8 means using a 8-bit character set. The title will be the title that goes up in the very top of the browser. The header section is just that, the very top of our header section. The body is where most of the action happens. We're going to use something called a P tag, which means a paragraph tag. And you'll see that after every tag, I open it and I close it. The opening tag is just the tag name by itself between the angle brackets. And the closed one is the same thing, but it has a forward slash right before it. Okay, so now I'll go ahead and save this, and then how do we open it and look at it in a browser? You go into Windows in your folder where you have it, which for me, example 1, and I can double click on it, and it should open it up in Internet Explorer, I believe, and you see it right there. Now if I wanted to open it in another browser, I could do that. I could say File, Open with Google is probably a good one that we're going to use a lot. Because it seems to be the most HTML5 compliant. And not much to it, just says welcome to HTML5. Now I could change it. Let's say, well, gee, that's kind of hard to see. Do we have something that's a little bigger? There's also these H tags, H1, H2, H3 tags, that we'll look at in a moment, that are heading tags. And they essentially make it a lot bigger and bold. So now you see it's a lot bigger. So very simple first page there. And we'll see some others as well. The doc type is required in HTML5 so that browsers render the page in standards mode. So because you can have different document types, and it's not all text. And you got to worry about backward compatibility and things like that. Comments that I just showed you that we just did are these guys here. Comments don't show up anywhere on a browser. There are things that you put there for documentation purposes for other human beings to see, not for browsers to see. We looked at a couple already. The HTML is sort of the envelope of the entire thing. Everything's wrapped around HTML. You'll see that it starts with HTML and it should have been a forward slash. Alright. And it ends with HTML. The header section usually only has the title and metadata in it. Later on, we'll see that most of the JavaScript also goes in the header section. We'll see more header metadata. So there's not too much. The main thing you see in that you would actually visibly see is the title and the body section. It's got different character sets. UTF-8 is the most popular for the web. And we haven't gotten into any CSS yet, but we'll later, in a bit, we'll see, or next week or something, we'll see how that works too. The start tag, like I said, is the element itself, and the end tag is the same thing, but it's got a forward slash. So HTML is the start tag, and forward slash HTML is the end tag. You can also have what they call attributes, which I don't think we've got just yet. Oh, we do. Char set equals UTF-8. That's an attribute. And that's kind of how you do it. You do variable or attribute equals value. It is a nested element because it's nested inside of the start and end tags of the header. It describes what's on the document. If we were to look at this here, we see the title for Google. It just says welcome. If I change that title to say something else, and I save it, then we go back to Google. See right there, it just says welcome right now, but if I do a refresh, it now says welcome to HTML5 because I changed the title. Paragraphs, which we talked about earlier. Just text in a paragraph format. We can do a validator on this if we want. Let's see. Let's see if we can do this. Validator.w3. Okay, so I'm going to browse and passed one warning. What was the warning? Oh, it says that I'm using a experimental. The HTML5 hasn't really been completely finalized yet, so probably why that happened. Six heading types. Actually, all HTML provides six heading types, not just one. I showed you H1, and they go down. You know, I can say they go down in value. Make this an H2. And you can see an H3 and everything. Ultimately, what you're going to see is that they get a little smaller each time. Yeah, obviously, to have a complete document, you should put headers and titles. And, actually, headers and titles are also good for search engines to find you. You generally want search engines to find you. And I'll show you all the different headings you can get. You could link to something if you want. I'll show you how a link works. It's pretty straightforward. And they're going to show you links to different websites. And pretty straightforward to do. You can just say P A href equals basically A is for an anchor tag, href is the HTTP reference, which is a fully qualified website, then an angle bracket, and then a descriptor of what you want. It doesn't have to be that, it could be Bob Timlin's website, and then the /A closes the anchor. Now if I were to go to Google and refresh this, I can click on that link, and what it's going to do is it simply brings up my website. You can put as many links as you want. This could be, you know, your favorite sites and stuff like that. You can put Google there if you want. So now we go to Google's website. Strong elements basically put things in bold, which could be useful. Right now, if we look at these, they're not in bold. We can put it in strong. I think this will work. Let's try. This is basically in bold. So you see how Bob Gillen's website's a little stronger than Google. You can also put an email address if you want, though I really don't like using email addresses. We'll talk about that later, why I don't like using them. You should put your enclosing attributes in either single or double quotes, although you don't have to. Generally considered a good idea. I don't like this mail to URL. The problem with it is because it requires you to have an email client like Mozilla or Outlook or something installed. I really don't like it at all. There's better ways of doing it. The way I like to do it is a fairly simple server-side PHP script. You guys have already been using it for when you sign your attendance and stuff. And if you look at how it would work, it'd be pretty simple. It's just ahref equals mail to and that address. And if you click on it, what happens is an email client pops up. And the problem is, I don't even think I have email installed on this computer, so it won't even work. And the href would be mail to. See, it doesn't even work for me because I don't have an email client installed. So it won't even work. It's really not a really good way to do it. We'll show you a very simple. But normally if you had an email of some kind installed, you'd get something like this. Images, you can put images in pretty easily, any type of image, that href as well. And there's all kinds of places for storing your images, because they can get quite large, and also for finding images. You just take a picture of yourself. An image is fairly straightforward. I'm not sure if I've got an image here, but let me see. Let's see if I can find an image. So I could go in here and say, ing source equals Bob 2010.jpg, and that's about it. And there I am. So that's how simple it is to get your image on it. It's straightforward. Any questions so far?